So thanks for joining us, guys. We are here today and we have a good webinar for you regarding cybersecurity insurance and everything that you need to know about it, how to purchase it, use it, and exactly what you're going to need for your cybersecurity insurance. So with that, we'll go ahead and get you started. I'll send you over to Henry and he can introduce our guest.
All right. Thank you so much, Stephanie. And thank you all for joining us today. We are really excited to be sharing this very important subject with you. Before we get rolling, I want to let you know that we have a ton of other resources. We try to make sure and keep the community and our client base really educated about what's important. So it's up at turnkeysaw.com/resources. We've got a ton of videos, past webinars, white papers, resource papers, our newsletter, just a lot of other things. So if you're curious about a subject, IT related, we've probably written the paper about it or a book or something along that line. But one of the cool things that's happening this year, 2024, is Turnkey Solutions is turning 25. We are really excited about this. And as part of that, we're going to be handing out a $100 little gift card at the end of this webinar and something like that, if not better, at the end of pretty much every event we're doing this year. We got a ton of really cool things, from a big event celebrating our birthday. We're going to have quite the birthday party we're planning, to a ton of other really good resources like this happening. So we're really excited that you're here. Thank you so much for joining us. And without further ado, I'm the boring one here. I'm Henry Overton, president and one of the founders of Turnkey Solutions, and that's kind of all I know. What I'm most excited about today is introducing you to Andy Runyon. Now, Andy's what they call a managed service provider partner success manager. I think I got that right.
That's it.
About right at Fifth Wall, and he really is a teacher of all things cyber insurance. So we're really passionate about the importance of that here at Turnkey, and Andy's the perfect partner for that. So Andy, tell us a little bit about Fifth Wall and
Sure.
why we should be excited about hearing from you today.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the introduction. I love that you use the word teacher. I spent my first 10 years out of college in the classroom and found my way back into a teaching role as it regards to insurance, or relates to insurance. So I love that. But yeah, Fifth Wall was founded in 2017. We originally started as a typical insurance wholesale brokerage. And what that means is we dealt with mom and pop insurance agencies, generalist insurance agencies across the United States. It was really up in the Northeast is where we started. Fifth Wall was founded in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Well, as without going too far down the rabbit hole, as COVID happened and, so much cybercrime shifted down into the small to medium sized business sector, what we started seeing happening was two things. Number one, more SMBs started adopting cyber insurance. And two, carriers started asking more questions. And generalist insurance agents didn't really like the whole idea of questions about MFA, EDR, incident response plans, right? They didn't know what those things were, and they didn't care to learn. So what started happening around 2021 was these apps for cyber insurance. And some of you folks that are on the webinar may have seen this happen. They went from 4 or 5 questions to 4 or 5 pages. And then they went from 4 or 5 pages to 15 pages, right? And the insureds, the clients, started going, hey, I need somebody technical to help me with this. I'm going to my IT guy. I'm going to my MSP, right? Help me answer these questions. Tell me what we have and what we don't have. So Fifth Wall around 2022 made a shift, and we started working directly with MSPs to help them help their clients procure the best cyber insurance that they can get for the best cost. And what I do nationwide, we have partners in all 50 states now in 2024, have over 1,100 partners nationwide, as I help our MSP partners that have come to us with their hands in the air going, hey, this cyber insurance thing is frustrating us. It's frustrating our clients. I help educate our MSP partners around best practices for both them and their clients to help make cyber insurance less of a headache.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, certainly a fantastic resource for us, because I don't know what I don't know in this realm. And it's
Sure.
really great to have a resource that, like, I've known other people at Fifth Wall before I got the chance to meet you. And
Right.
thus far, everybody I've met there has been of the same kind of ethos of just being a teacher. And that's been
That's
really
right.
so. we're excited about that. Look, before we get too far into this today, I want to make sure that you know that at the end of the webinar, we got a couple things I want to give away. One is a $899 insurance audit from Andy and his team, where they will take apart your entire policy and understand your company in great detail. We'll talk more about it. We're going to give away 2 of those for free, courtesy of Andy and his team. So that's a phenomenal resource. You'll understand more why that's such an incredible deal, even at $899 before we go out of here. But there's nothing Turnkey has to sell. It's purely an educational webinar. So if you're interested, great. If not, that's okay too. Hopefully you'll learn a lot here. But one thing that we're giving away, again, as part of our 25th anniversary, just for hanging out and watching us, me and Andy talk today, for the pain of going through that, we're going to give away a $100 gift card. We'll randomly draw it at the end of the webinar, so hang tight. It'll be fun. So high level, let's cover just the table of contents of what we're going to go through today. First is why a special cybersecurity incident or cyber policy is so important. It's a must-have for any business. We'll kind of cover that just really fast. How to buy an insurance policy, and this is where we start shifting to where it's going to be pretty much all Andy talking, so hang tight. 5 must-have security controls for cybersecurity insurance policies. Some big things to look out for, or in my terms, whopper caveats when buying a policy. How to make sure you don't get a penny. This is a negative. So basically, we're going to look at like how to do a claim well, how to be prepared for it, God forbid, if you ever need a claim, how to be prepared to make sure that you maximize your claim, and the flip side, how to make sure if you do things wrong, how you can pretty much get nothing. And then we're going to wrap up with a super simple checklist that that every business needs to have printed out, somewhere written down, burned into your memory, for what to do when you have a claim. So that's kind of the high level. Now we're going to fly through a lot of stuff here today, but on that first piece, why cyber policy is so important. Look, this is a cute example of what's going on here. The thieves are coming over the fences, through the walls, through the windows, everywhere, every possible way that that they can. They're breaking into and stealing money from businesses, either through destroying your assets, making you have to file for breach notification, just a million different ways, holding you ransom. And our job here at Turnkey is to look at all the big standards like National Institute of Standards and Technology, HIPAA, the CISA, or big studies from IBM and Microsoft and those guys to see what works. And so our advice, just kind of high level, is there's like 18 or so core things, and I'm flying past them, but there's some pretty common things that all the big advisory groups, all the big studies will say, look, these things, if you do them and do them well, will work very effectively to stopping the bad guys. They will not make you perfect. There's never perfect. There's never a spot where you're connected to the internet and safe 100%. But it's important to note that there are things that are proven to dramatically reduce your risk factors. The first, down there at the bottom left, is a risk assessment. And then you'll see some things in here that are probably pretty common knowledge, like a good antivirus and good firewall and patches and little things like that. But years and years ago, we started at Turnkey saying, look, we got to start with a risk assessment. We got to do some things in the middle. But the last and most significant thing that has been a point of conversation, just a really heavy push with our clients, is that you have to have a cyber insurance policy. This is the golden ticket out. If all those other things fail, they're all important safety nets or defenses or protections. But in the end, if the hackers find a way through, we just have to have that cyber policy, because again, as an IT company and as a network administrator and as somebody who just really studies, and our entire company here at Turnkey, we really study aggressively what are the things that we can bring to our clients to keep them safe. And the sad reality is there's nothing that's perfect. Another way to look at this is one of those big studies that we look at every year that's been a really just a valuable source of information is the IBM cost of a data breach report. 2023's report, which covered the data from 2022, but they looked at thousands of breaches across organizations around the world, and they found that in America, now this is not global, they surveyed globally, but American breaches on average cost an organization $9.48 million on average. Now that's from tiny little organizations to really big ones, somewhere in the middle. That's what they're finding. In America, it's $3.31 million for the average size, the average breach for organizations with less than 500 people in the company. So I don't know how big your company is. We've got a lot of people on the webinar, but if you've got under 500 employees at that organization, you're probably looking at a pretty sizable breach penalty or you know, the cost of remediation and paying the lawyers and all those things. Another stat that the IBM study looked at is it takes 200+ days to just identify a breach, to identify that the hackers have been in there and that they're doing stuff. That's like 6-7 months on average before we even are aware that there's a hacker in the system taking stuff out. So it's really painful. And without going into all the data, there's specific data around if your industry in this report. It's a phenomenal report, but there's some industries where it costs a whole lot more, and there's other industries where it costs less, maybe on a breach because of the value of your data or whatever. But it's just important to understand and really internalize that. Look, the cost of insurance is incredibly cheaper than the cost of a breach. And I don't think you're going to look at any policies that cost even a fraction of, you know, well, some fraction, but not a significant fraction of $3.31 million. So that's pretty much it for me. And that's what I tell customers whenever we get a chance to meet, Andy, as I tell them, look, I don't know how to write the policy for you. I don't write policies. I don't sell insurance. Right. I just know that if my firewalls and antivirus and SIM and SOC and all that stuff fails, we're going to have a bad day. So please find somebody. And at this point, I'm going to kind of start leaning pretty heavy on you today.
Sure.
I'm so glad that we have somebody here that that there are people that are teachers in this industry. So you know, when you and I
before we jump in real quick, if you don't mind me interrupting, my comment on this, because listen, insurance, and I'm going to start by putting a little skin in the game here. We have done a really poor job, and I don't mean Fifth Wall, I mean insurance as a whole, of conditioning you people, the listeners, the business owner, that $1 million is enough, right? Think about it. When you went out and you bought your GL policy, how much is that? It's $1 million, right? When you got your business auto limits, you got $1 million. When you went out and got work comp, it was 500,000 or $1 million, probably, right? Mm-hmm. So what do people do? If they buy cyber insurance, they get usually what we see, 500,000 or $1 million. But guess what? Guys, with the data that Henry's showing there, and where our biggest talk track is right now is based on your revenue, based on your employees, based on your exposure. There are a lot of folks out there that need far more than $1 million of cyber insurance, and they just don't know it because they don't understand their exposure. So I really appreciate you starting there. That's a key point and an opportunity for me to kind of admit up front that insurance has not done a great job of explaining that to people over the years.
Well, on the same note, I think a lot of IT people, not turnkey, but a lot of IT people say, yeah, if we do X, Y, and Z, we're going to be safe. And that's it's failing on both of our parts to not address the cold, hard reality. So, well, tell us how to buy a policy. Like, what should we look at?
Yeah. So first of all, there are a lot of options out there, right? The first thing you need to do is educate yourself on, what type of policies are available. There's cyber business owner policies add-on or endorsements that we call them, right? There's cyber warranties that are being sold through MSPs currently, and there's comprehensive cyber insurance. So know exactly, what you're looking at. And we'll talk about how getting involved with an agent that knows what they're talking about will help with that. The main thing is right now, guys, is I know there are probably folks out there that don't have MFA on across the board. MFA is multi-factor authentication. It's that little ping you get on your cell phone when you log in that says, hey, is this you, right? That's table stakes right now for good cyber insurance. You're either going to get denied or you're going to pay the piper for it. You're going to have an increased deductible or you're going to have a higher premium. So get MFA on as soon as you can and before you apply. Get a risk quantification. Find somebody that knows what they're doing. Go back. Like Henry already kind of showed you some good base numbers. Part of the giveaway today is a product that we offer where we can walk a client through that risk quantification and say, hey, at your revenue with your employees, with the data that you have at 5, 15, 30, 45, 60 days down, here's what you're looking at based on claims submitted. We're not just pulling numbers out of the air, right? So have somebody that can help quantify your risk. We know that the average downtime nationwide is about 15 days, and that's like in the black, can't do anything, right? You find somebody that can help you put a number to that 15 days or that 20 days or that 30 days. Finding the right agent or underwriter. Listen, here's the question. Can you get me a cyber quote? That's what everybody asks their agent, right? Yeah. There's a difference between being able to get you a cyber quote, which most generalist agents can do in 2024, and understanding the policy that they present and having full market access. Both of those things are massive when it comes to purchasing the right cyber. Pricing's all over the place, so having full market access and finding a carrier that's going to give you the best rate is a really big deal. And then having an agent that can walk you through line item by line item and say, hey, this is what dependent business interruption means, right? This is what cybercrime means. This is how funds transfer fraud is different than invoice manipulation, things like that, right? And then at last, and I love that you put this on there, talk through your policy with your legal and finance teams, bring everybody in. We're all about collaboration. If you're only talking about insurance with your insurance agent and he's the only person in the room when it comes to cyber, that's not a good thing, guys. You should be having a conversation with insurance, with your IT, with your MSP team, with legal, right? Like all of those things, those parties should have clear line of sight with each other and speak with each other when it comes to purchasing a policy. So really good information. These are all things that you should consider before you go to market.
And folks, just so you know, we kind of prepped the conversation, and Andy and I walked through the conversation several times, and we've both been doing our respective parts of this job for years. But I'm going to encourage Andy to go off script and just kind of tell from his heart, tell us what you're really thinking. If there's something put on the screen that you want to go down a different rabbit hole, by all means. But I love that having a good conversation with parties that have your best interests at heart. Because if you're talking with your legal and they say, who is your agent, or who is the underwriting, underwriter company or whatever, or have you looked at your finances? Like, would this policy, if you bring the right person or people to the team, it makes the whole project more effective. And it's when you get all of the right people to the table that you're really going to get the absolute perfect policy or the best possible policy and protections. But at least have one or two people in this description at the table. Yeah,
I'm just saying, I'll make a little admission here. I cut my teeth as a generalist agent at the regional level in Arkansas. And guys, I realized very quickly to be a good cyber agent, I couldn't be a generalist agent. There's just too much to do, right? I was selling work comp, home and auto, health insurance. I mean, I was licensed in everything, right? Just trying to feed these 3 kids. And real quick, I figured out cyber is extremely, extremely detailed. And that was when I made the pivot in my career to go be a cyber specialist, because I knew to be good at it, I had to do just that.
All right. And that's same with IT You can be a jack of all trades and a master of none if you're not careful here.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Well, tell us, we looked at some of your papers where you educate people, and I stole this directly from one of y'all's educational pieces, but tell us why you think these 5 things are so important or why they're part of pretty much the
Right.
question and answer
Right.
application.
And let's go backwards before we go forwards a little bit. If we go back to where we were at in 2019 or 2018, guys, some of you, if you've had cyber insurance for more than 5 years, you've seen these apps change from like, what's your revenue? How many employees have you had a breach? And are you in the marijuana or adult film industry? Like literally, that's what they asked in 2019. And then we got a policy, and it was like, here's $1 million policy for $4,000, right?
Yeah.
And now we're starting to ask like, where is MFA? What type of EDR do you have? Is it managed 24/7, right? Like there's all these like crazy questions. So one of the biggest things that's happening in the industry right now, and again, I talk to MSPs nationwide every day or every week, what questions are most important? I've got this 15-page app. What are the key things, right? Well, first of all, multi-factor authentication. Are you who you say you are, right? And guys, honestly, like there's a difference between base level multi-factor authentication and me putting a pin in when I log in every time, right? And things like passwordless and being able to scan biometrics. I know nobody wants Big Brother in their pocket, right? But like MFA has really matured over the years, and we're going to start seeing the more mature, stronger phishing resistant MFA, which is the CISA recommendation, carry more weight. Segregated backups. What that means is essentially, are your backups offline? How quickly can we get back up and running, right? And if you think about it from an actuarial standpoint, I mean, essentially, insurance has figured out the longer you're down, the more it's going to cost them, right? So they want to know how quickly you can get back up. It's not hard to figure that out. EDR and antivirus, we're starting to see a trend towards, antivirus is old school, right? EDR is becoming table stakes, and what some carriers are wanting to see. We've seen a release this week where certain carriers are given a 12.5% reduction on premium if you have MDR, which is 24/7, monitored all day, 7 days a week, endpoint detection, right? So there is a trend in the industry there for MDR. Patching management, we deal with 0 days regularly, right? And if you're if you're in the crowd, you know what that means. Like new vulnerabilities come out, and you need to go in and you need to patch that hole into the system. Think about it as like an open door into your house that just pops up out of nowhere, right? We need to stick a door on that thing and put a lock on it. Those happen daily, right? And how often are we, completing patch management? They want to see that inside of 30 days. And then lastly, and this is probably everybody's least favorite other than MFA on the employee level, is that training. And the old days of we have our internal marketing department record a video and tell you not to click on anything, and we show it at the holiday party for 5 minutes and call it good for the year. Those days are long gone. We can't do that anymore, right? So what we're seeing now is individual training, phishing simulation, remediation for people that click on bad emails, right? Like, there's stuff out there where you get a grade, right? Just like in school, if you're clicking on stuff left and right, you might get a fail grade. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to get fired. What it means is you're going to get more education on what to click on and what not to click on, because essentially you are the weakest link of the organization, and that's how bad actors want in. So those things, if you're 5 for 5 here, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to get a solid insurance policy at a fair rate compared to what the market is, and you'll have a lower deductible in the event of a claim.
Yep. Now, we had some questions online, like what is EDR, next generation antivirus, or what's segregated backups? And without going into great detail, and by the way, that's where I can spend 4 or 5 hours just chatting.
Right. Sure.
But the high level is this next generation or endpoint detection response is the endpoint protection software, what we used to call antivirus, looks at as a very specific thing called a signature, like it's a line of code or a file attribute, and says this is matching a list and it's a virus, and I'm going to block it. Well, that got to where we were having hundreds of thousands of new viruses released a day. So nowadays, a good endpoint detection and response, or EDR, next gen EDR, what they're doing is they're looking at behavior of those files, and or they're looking at this cloud database of signatures that's got billions and billions of indexes that they can run through real quick and see, does it match that file type that's in this massive database that wouldn't fit on your hard drive, or does it match a behavior that's odd? And the kicker here is, are they able to automatically respond and quarantine the behavior? Like, is it going to stop it from copying itself, or stop it from connecting to other computers, or stop it from encrypting files or deleting files? And then the monitored or managed function allows it to be watched 24/7 by somebody who can help with the response, who can maybe initiate a rollback from backups, those kind of things. So there's a lot more detail. I don't want to get lost in the weeds on that. Really good question. And I'm listening to you speak, Andy, and there's just 100 things that I'm like, well, what does that mean from insurance? So I just want to encourage people, please ask your questions.
Yeah,
Put
sure.
them in the chat down at the bottom. If we can, we'll get to them today. If we can't, we'll make sure and follow up afterwards.
If there are two industries that love confusing buzzwords, it is managed services and insurance. So if there's any guys, if there's anything that we're saying, deductible, bind, anything policy and lingo, please feel free to ask.
Please, please, please. All right. Okay, so the big whopper caveats. We might have hit one or two of them already, but kind of walk through, like, what's the stuff that we got to make sure and do or not do.
Right. Yeah. So one of the unfortunate things right now is there is definitely a narrative out in the public that cyber insurance doesn't pay. Right. That my buddy had this policy, he had a claim and he didn't get any money back. Right. Well, let's talk about why that is. Because honestly, I'm seeing legal rulings that go the opposite way, right? Like if the carrier writes a policy and it's supposed to pay and they get drug into court system, I see courts ruling on the side of the insured way more than they're ruling on the side of the insurance company. So how do we quote unquote not pay? Well, the first thing is not knowing what you buy, right? We'll talk about this. This is more like, on the coverage size at the end. Make sure you know what you buy. And then also too, guys, be truthful with what you put on that app. I would rather you come laid bare and us have a conversation about why you don't have these things and how do we get them on than you lie about what you got, right? So when it says, do you have MFA, right? Don't put yes if the answer is no, right? I mean, very basically, because what's going to happen is if you put that you have MFA on your email and your C-suite does not, and they are the most targeted group in the organization, you have a breach. Forensics comes in and they look and they go, we don't see MFA here. Guess what? Cyber insurance isn't going to pay because you lied on your app, right? It's no different, guys, than life insurance. No different, right? Like if I had a life insurance policy where I said that I was a fully healthy 42-year-old white male and I don't drink, don't smoke, don't do any drugs, right? And I die of an overdose and there's drugs in my system, right? And it's obvious that I was a tobacco user. That policy is not going to pay to my wife post-mortem, right? It's no different with any other types of insurance. Okay. Yeah. The other thing is like, man, get with Henry and get with his team as you're going through your application and make sure you know what they're asking, right? I mentioned it just a second ago and I forgot this was coming up, but we love our acronyms, right? What's NJAV, right? What's SIM? What's MSSP, right? Like, what are all these things? Make sure that you know what you're including there. So Henry mentioned earlier, and I'm glad you put this on there. What if I didn't have coverage, right? Like, what if I'm new to cyber insurance and I buy it in February? Okay. Well, I guess March now. I buy it in March and we have a breach in April and they come in and they say, well, the bad actors were on there since October, right? Here's the main thing. And this is, we had a good little conversation on this the other day, right? Did you know, right? Guys, if you get a ransom demand on a Tuesday, you can't turn around on Wednesday and go buy cyber insurance if you don't have it, right? There's obvious knowledge that a bad actor's there, right? If there's no prior knowledge, if it's obvious that nobody in the organization had knowledge that there had been a breach, you can still get coverage. You can still be paid out. What you can't have happen is, let's say Jerry in accounting on 2 different occasions has wired, 30 grand. And so you go buy cyber insurance and try to make a claim for previous. You can't do that, right? There is coverage for events in that if they got into the system earlier, but we're going to look at the loss. When did the loss occur? Did it occur after the policy was bound? If it did, then we should be okay.
Yep.
And then what does it cover? That's really kind of what I was getting into about knowing what you're buying. Had a good friend that bought a policy through his local agent. Local agent didn't explain it very well. Didn't ask him how much money he was wiring regularly. And the guy's regularly wiring between 50 and 100K, right? So they get a false invoice. He wires 65,000 to poof, goes to a bad actor. They realize it. They report it to insurance. Insurance pays out $5,000. And the guy's like, well, this is stupid. Cyber insurance is done. Why did I even buy insurance? It said from the inception of the policy that in the event of an invoice being manipulated, the policy would pay the policy did exactly what it said it was going to do from the time it was written, right?
Yeah.
So know what you're buying, quantify your risk, figure out what's going on, have somebody who can talk to you about the types of loss you may experience. I was just talking with a nonprofit yesterday. Really, really important that they have specific coverage if somebody gets in their network and sends out mass emails to their donor base and fishes from them, right? That is a very, very specific line item of coverage. Find somebody that knows how to cover you for that based on your exposure.
Yeah. And if you're talking to a generalist that doesn't know the situations that come up, they're not going to know the kinds of things to say, hey, what about if this happens? What about if that happens?
Right.
And it's not Andy writing the underwriting policy. It's not Fifth Wall that's the actual insurance underwriter, but it's y'all who are the experts in the industry that can say, look, if this happens, the tools out there, the underwriting companies out there, the Lloyd's of London's and whomever out there, that, some of them offer a coverage for that scenario. And by the way, we're seeing that scenario
Right.
come up more often nowadays. But if you're not talking to the right person, they're not going to know that exact situation. It's a special line item if somebody gets into your email and spams and fishes all of your contacts.
Correct.
So and just knowing what it covers and having somebody that can walk through that is just, man, it's daunting. But it is so important to have that. All right, so I went negative on this one, and you can flip it around if you want to, but how to make sure you do get paid, or how to make sure you don't get paid. We talked about this a second ago. Lie.
Yeah, I already brought it up. Sure.
That's just about as good as lying, right?
Yeah, and I jumped the shark on this one a little bit, but we see it so often. I mean, I honestly, I consulted with the hospital recently in the last year that their IT guy just openly went through and said, yeah, yes, we do everything, right? No, you don't. It's no, you don't. And if you do that, if you're falsely attesting to the things on the application, like we said, that's going to lead to a denial.
Second, and I know we just said this, but gang, this is so important. I just can't stress this because we have customers who tell us they have a cyber insurance policy. I ask for a copy of it, and it's a general liability policy. I'm not an insurance guy, but I'm looking at it, and it says if your roof collapses or if somebody drives a car through the building, okay, that's not a cyber policy. But it is so important to know what you bought, and if you had somebody like
here's a great if you want to hear a good example of this, this is something that happened to us this week. We consulted a group that does $243 million a year in revenue, right? So nearly $250 million in revenue. The line item of reputational harm. So what does reputational harm means? It means after the computers are up, right, and you're back and running, If somebody sends you an email and says, hey, we heard about your breach, we're not comfortable with you guys because you didn't protect our data, we're going to your competitor. Or if they start bleeding business, right? You can go back to the year before. If you had a breach in March and then April comes up, let's say you only did 1.5 million this year when you did 2 last year, right? That's reputational harm. So this group did $243 million in revenue. They had $100,000 of reputational harm coverage across 2 policies. 100,000. That's a single one of their clients leaving. One, right? That number should have been 50 times that, right? Like it should have been way, way more. And they just didn't know what they had bought.
Yep. Yep. That's huge. All right. What about this one? We had an IT company story I think it was like in Minnesota from a few years ago where actually the IT company fell for a cyber scam, and they filed the claim under their business policy, their GL, and they didn't file it under their business paid out, I think, about a fifth of what their cyber policy would have paid.
That's right.
Is that something like, how do we navigate that? How do we say, how do I file this even?
It's knowing what you have and making sure when you make that. I mean, if you have a breach, if you lose money, or if you experience a ransomware event, we would hope that you have an incident response plan. It's one thing that Henry and his team can help you develop, right? Is like they'll help you get lined out on what do we do if the stuff hits the fan. Well, part of that incident response plan is when you have a breach, you call insurance, right? Who do you call, right? Do you call your generalist agent or do you call a cyber specialist? Well, if you've aligned with a cyber specialist, you call those guys in the event of a breach. They're going to point you in the right direction. They're going to tell you who to file. But yes, we've seen regularly throughout the country the miseducation that general liability insurance or a business owner policy when filed, like that'll cover cyber, and it either doesn't or it covers it at a much, much lower limit than what a fully comprehensive cyber policy will cover.
Yep. All right. Well, okay, let's look at the next one. And we've seen this unfortunately happen as well. Right. Is it, what I heard people say a lot of times is it's a crime scene.
Right.
Get hacked. What are we supposed to do when you feel like you're getting hacked?
So again, first thing that we would do is what we always do is if you see something, say something, right? Like if you think something's not going on or something's going on that's not right, there's nothing wrong, guys. You can file a claim, and if there's nothing there and there's no money lost, you can go ahead and open a claim and go, oh, well, hey, nothing came of this, and it's not going to hurt you on the back end, right? So call your insurance agent, call your MSP or MSSP, right? Go ahead and notify legal, right? And then what's going to happen is if you have a comprehensive cyber insurance policy, is they're going to get in touch with your MSP, and they're going to establish clear guidelines of what forensics can do, what the MSP can do, what role they can play. And that stuff happens very, very quickly. It happens within, hours, if not days, right? So go ahead and notify, get the right parties involved. Don't start, don't unplug computers and throw stuff out the window or set anything on fire. Call the specialist and they can point you in the right direction.
Or, what we've seen happen a lot of times is the IT team is told, or they just go ahead and start restoring from backup.
Correct. Yes.
That's
100%.
That is not cool in a cyber attack incident. So
that's right.
All right. Well, there's a million other things that we can cover on all of these subjects, folks. What I hope you're seeing is that there is a wealth of knowledge available to you, and there's ways to do this right, and there's ways to do this wrong. Andy, when we talk a lot with folks, like you mentioned, one of the things that we try really hard to make sure all of our customers have is this thing called a cyber incident response plan, or just an incident response plan. And our general advice, and tell me if you think from the insurance organization's perspective, but like there's 2 steps that we kind of tell everybody to do. Is number 1 is call your legal. Is that something that y'all would recommend, or should they call their underwriter or their agent first if they think they're
Honestly, I mean, I don't think you can mess this up. I mean, they need to be one of the first 3 calls, right? We always say the first 3 calls, you can pick the order based on who's awake and who answers the phone first, right? Is your managed service provider, your insurance provider, and your legal counsel.
Yeah. Well, we put it kind of in that order
Yep.
ourselves, but y'all heard it from directly from the insurance guy is somewhere in the top three. Please
Mhm.
call your legal because there's things that they can advise you on that we can't, either IT or insurance. And there's this cool thing that they get you called attorney-client privilege, where you can talk in confidence and kind of really start, unfolding what's going on and what's happening, and it be protected by some U.S. laws there that are pretty important. But somewhere in the next few steps, I scribbled out, call your insurance provider, get your copy of your cyber plan, call the police. Here in Louisiana, we have some phenomenally well-trained and prepared police that can have access to resources from the feds and CIA, and they can tap into this massive network of pretty good IT resources to find out technically what's going on. And call your IT company at some point or another. It's not that we don't want to be called. It's that I know that you'd be better served making sure we get your lawyer and your and the insurance guys on the phone, either right before me or while we're at it. And then walk through your communications plan, walk through the rest of it. The fun thing that we look at is that there is a specific set of oh, I got the wrong thing up there. There is a specific set of things that should be in any cyber incident response plan. Like you gotta have one. And like you said, we can help you with it. There's got to be a cyber incident response plan ahead of time. It needs to be unique to you. It needs to be something that you have tested recently, and it needs to be something that is like, here's the crazy thing, for an IT guy to say this, it sounds really weird. It needs to be printed.
Yeah,
Because
100%.
what we don't want to see is you scrambling for your cyber incident response plan that's saved in a file share on a server that the bad guys
That's right.
just encrypted. And I've seen that happen. Like
I have too. If I was about to say, I wouldn't be, I'm not laughing at anybody. I'm laughing with you because we've seen the exact same thing.
Yeah. So there's some specific things in there, like the cyber incident response plan should have your lawyer's number in it. Because if you're on vacation and we need to call the lawyer, that plan should have the lawyer's number in there so that you're not scrambling trying to find it, or your leadership team isn't trying to find it. It needs to have your insurance guy's number in it. It needs to have steps of your communications plan. So anyway, this is not super complicated, folks, to get started with a really good incident response plan. This is it right here. It's always going to start with these in some close order for you. And your legal counsel may say, look, we're going to, for you, what you do for a living in your industry, we're going to recommend we change the order a little bit. Or your insurance policy may say you have to do things in a little different order. So somewhere in there, this is kind of fairly decent, close approximation to what we should do after a claim, after a possible or confirmed suspected whatever, after the dust is settling a little bit, if it was really attack or not, if you find out that it was just a IT issue, or if you find out that you had a big problem. One thing that we've always heard, and I've always been told, is never squander a good disaster. Learn something from
right.
it.
That's right.
And debrief. So take that incident. What did we learn? Go re-edit that cyber incident response plan and tune it up to make sure that you've implemented some things that you learned from this last thing. So. Andy, as we wrapping up, is there anything else that you would think along those lines? Any kind of yeah. What else?
No, so in the chat, I dropped ic3.gov. Guys, that's the FBI hotline for theft of funds. We've talked a lot about ransomware today, but theft of funds is on the rise, like phishing, invoice manipulation, things like that. If you do have loss of funds, or if you wire money to a bad actor, the best chance that the FBI is going to have, you can get that money back from your cyber insurance, but it may take a little bit to go through the claims process. Identify the FBI immediately. Let them know within 72 hours. I do a lot of work. I think I mentioned I live in Arkansas. I do a lot of work in Arkansas and the surrounding states with CISA, which is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. They talk a lot about how they work with the FBI to recoup funds, and reporting to IC3.gov within 72 hours can be extremely helpful, right? So that should be there. Henry mentioned on the incident response plan, and I thought this was really good, to get that printed, get it offline, right? Guys, listen, don't let the fear of doing the perfect thing keep you from doing anything. And what I mean by that is like when you think about a cyber incident response plan, a lot of people go, oh my God, this is a huge document and we don't have one. And how do we get there? Well, the best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. If you left this call today and all you did was get a folder, print out cyber incident response plan, put it at the front, and then list some key numbers to call and attach of the front part of your cyber insurance policy, what carrier it's with, and who to make a claim with, you're ahead of the game. I promise you. Sitting on my side of the fence. If all you did was that today, you'd be ahead of half of organizations in the United States.
Oh, did you hear that? Like we're talking print out the first page of your insurance. What'd you say? The first page of that on a blank sheet of paper, write out your insurance guy's name, your lawyer, and scribble out and number 2 pencil cyber incident response plan.
And I swear you're ahead of half the people out there. It's a major miss right now. We don't see a whole lot of preparation on that end. And to Henry's point, when people are post breach, when they're right-a-boom, as we call it in the industry, there's a lot of folks shaking their head going, man, we should have done more preparation on the front end. We should have done a tabletop. We should have had a plan, right? And that's, we do like, you love for learning to occur from those and people to get better, but we'd really appreciate if they didn't happen in the first place.
Absolutely. So, and that's the beauty of, a ton of companies call us with, something weird is going on. And we find out it was just, literally the battery on the mouse going bad. It wasn't somebody hacking the screen or whatever, or it was, a very small thing or one computer got kind of a, what they call potentially unwanted program on it or whatever. It's some minor little issues. But stop right there and say, okay, had this been a hack, what would have been the plan? What would we have done? So absolutely. All right, Andy, one of the things that I'm most excited about bringing to people is the option to be able to do this with y'all. There is, like we talked about, this liability review or your policy review that you're offering. You sent me an example of it. Do you mind if I pull that up on the screen and just
go right ahead. Sure, happy to walk through it.
All right, I'm going to share this just so y'all know what. Here's kind of an example. We're going to walk through the PDF and kind of an example report of what Andy and his team would show if and it never fails. Somebody's blowing and weeding right outside my window. They know, they study when I'm going to do a webinar. It's awesome. That they're my biggest follower online. But this is an example of a policy review or liability review. Kind of walk through this. Tell us what I'm looking at.
Yeah, so essentially this is really a 2-year labor of love for me. This is something that I started out of necessity, and what I found was, as an old teacher, people would come to us and they would ask the same questions about cyber insurance, right? What's my exposure? How much should I buy? Do I have the right coverage? What does this mean, right? So essentially, when I came over to Fifth Wall, and Fifth Wall was already doing a lot of this stuff, but we decided, hey, this is a way for us to help our MSPs help their people. And we can do that through, this document. Really what we want to do in general is we want to help people identify their exposures. How can I get hit? What's the depth of it? Roadmap and deploy risk management. And we do that through a policy review and a gap analysis on their controls. And then make sure that they get top end coverage. Price benchmarking particularly. Guys, cyber insurance premiums are wild. I did one the other day that top end, like high end of the market was $162,000 and the low end of the market was 43. It doesn't take a mathematician to know that there is almost $20,000 of delta there between what you could pay and what you should pay. So that's really what the document does, and it starts with the heat map. Essentially, what we do is we walk through the three types of loss. Three types of loss: funds transfer fraud, third-party liability, notification cost, ransomware, and business interruption. We educate on what those are and how you can get hit. And then we educate on how they apply to your sector. We've got our key sectors there. If you don't fall into one of those sectors, doesn't mean that we're not going to talk to you about it, right? It's just a visual about how different types of cyber losses can happen and are more frequent in other sectors. So we start with that education piece. And then once we feel like the client has a good grasp on what the type of losses are and how they can be hit, then we look specifically at ransomware. It is the most common loss. It is the most frequent and the most large as far as numbers go, right? And what folks struggle with left and right across the country is how much is enough. Going back to my previous comment, is $1 million enough, right? So what we did here, like for this example, this was a $5.8 million accounting firm, so a small business, right? They had less than 500K records and about 25 employees. And we can put this into calculators that we have access to, and we can walk through based on claims that have been submitted and say, hey, at 5 days down to 60 days down, here's what those numbers could look like. Now, do we go in and say, hey, you need to buy $1.45 million of insurance? No, we don't. This isn't a sell with fear thing. It's educational. We'll tell them, CISA stats tell us that the average downtime is about 15 days. So for these guys, for this particular group, we would be comfortable with $1 million of insurance, but we need to have a conversation around controls that we don't get into, like what controls do we put in place, backups, right? EDR, security awareness training that make sure that we don't get into a 60-day loss, because then they could outkick their coverage.
Yep. So I can't tell you how awesome this is to be able to be armed with the facts, because you're not going to be pulling numbers out of your hat. You're looking at CISA numbers. You're looking at IC3, which that stands for Internet Crimes Complaint Center for the FBI. Y'all, this is like where if you're an American business or individual, this is who you should call if you get ransomed or if somebody scams you out of something and it uses the internet. So y'all are making estimates here based on businesses' real revenue, how much data they have, what the value of their data is, and then based on real-time industry numbers around, what the downtime, what the ransoms are, what this looks like in real world, and y'all don't have to guess anymore about would this be a good number for me to buy insurance? I don't know. And so many people have told us over the years, I don't know, we that exact thing. We have this amount of coverage. Hopefully that'll be enough.
Right. And that's a great time where we also talk about how turnkey and fifth wall work together, right? What your MSP does or your MSSP does, right, is they help you mitigate and reduce risk, right? They get you from that 60-day loss to a 5-day loss, right? Well, there's no group in the world that's going to put in their MSA, we can 100% guarantee you'll never have a financial loss if you use us. I've never seen it. Hopefully we will never see it, because you can't make that guarantee. Well, as long as that's there, there's going to be some risk hung over, right? And then you use insurance to transfer the remainder of the risk. So they mitigate and reduce. We transfer the remaining, and that's what that document helps you quantify, right? From there, we go to a policy review. If cyber insurance is a thing for them, if they have a current policy, we'll walk them through exactly what they have, what they don't have. As you can see for this for this client, there were some, they had $1 million policy, but again, reputational damage at 250K, right? Hardware replacement at 100K, dependent network interruption at 100K. There were some sublimits in this policy. And then the crimes coverages, that comes in at 100,000. Is that bad? How do you know? You got to have a conversation, right? Are you guys, is it physically possible for you to wire more than $100,000 in a single transaction? Is that something that happens regularly? If the answer to that's yes, right? we probably need more crime coverage. So those are open-ended conversations. They aren't, hey, you got us, right? But we'll go through the policy and tell them what they have and they don't have. From there, because at this point in the relationship, what Henry's team, Turnkey, will do is they will help you attest to, they'll walk with you through what you have and you don't have. It's a two-way conversation. It's part of the consultation. And then we'll look at where things are and where they aren't, right? This particular client had a couple of sectors of their network where they did not have MFA enabled, right? They did not have segregated backups. They weren't employing or deploying EDR at the time, right? So that not only increases their risk of a potential attack, it also increases their premium, right? So if you go to the last page there, Henry, what you'll see and how we kind of bring all this together is price benchmarking, right? What we'll tell you, and guys, this is key for a business, right? I told you the pricing's all over the place. At Fifth Wall, I'm not a commissioned employee, right? We want to bring education, right? We're not trying to write you the highest level policy possible so we can make the most money. What we'll do is we'll go in and we'll say, hey, at your revenue, for the limits that you're going to the market for, here's what bad, average, and good looks like, right? If you were that same size accounting firm and you're paying north of $4,000, you're above average in what you're paying. And if you're paying less than $4,000, there's $2,750 out there on the market, right? So how do we get from $7,300 to $2,750? Henry's team is the key. Listening to those guys about MFA, listening to them about EDR and security awareness training. Those controls are how you get from a $7,000 policy to a $2,000 policy.
Absolutely. And Andy, we had a question from somebody who said, "Look, I've got kind of a small budget, or I've got a $500,000 annual budget, and I don't think I could ever afford cyber insurance."
Sure.
What would you say to people who say, look, I don't know what the numbers are? Because some people may look at this and say $2,700 or $7,300, that's out of my budget. Or some people may say, oh, cool, you can write my $500 million policy for $7,300. That's awesome.
Yeah. It's all based on revenue, right? So the $500,000 entity isn't going to pay these numbers right here. This was a $5.2 million entity, right? So as your revenue goes down, so does your premium, right? But here's the thing that I always tell people, guys, if you can't afford the policy, you sure as hell can't afford the breach, right? Like think about how we think about things, right? If I can't afford a $2,000 policy to protect $1 million, you sure can't afford a $500,000 breach. You're out of business at that point, right? So I can't set your risk tolerance for you. I can't set your budget, right? All we can do is communicate those things to them and try to help find them the best policy for the best premium. The things you can do is you can set a higher deductible, right? You can opt for lower limits of coverage, things like that to help mitigate cost, but just not buying cyber insurance at all in 2024 is an extremely, extremely risky business decision.
And what I love about what you brought to the table is it's perfect answer to that question of I don't know if I can afford it. I'm scared of this, or I don't know if I'm overpaying, or I don't know X, and fill in the blank. What this process does is it tells us factually your company is facing these risks based on real world numbers. And if you want to mitigate some of those risks, you can drop your price down to this based on not just one coverage company, not just the one company that's paying, Andy, the highest commissions or whatever to sell their policy. They're going to look at all the companies that could possibly write your policies and give you the numbers across an average and be able to give you a spectrum of prices that you could pay just depending on how you want to accept or transfer some of those risks. Did I say that about right?
Oh, it's perfect, man. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So look, we're running out of time, Andy. This has gone much better than I had hoped, because you talked way more than I did. I I really appreciate that. I cannot encourage folks enough to do that. If you've got questions, and if you want to walk through that question, or email us now. Email us ask@tcast.la. If you're one of the first couple to get in there, then we're going to be able to get this for you for free, the whole audit process. And now let's get to the fun part. We've got who wants to win $100? Let's do this real quick. We really appreciate y'all hopping on and joining us through the very formal, sophisticated IT program called wheelofnames.com. We dumped in everybody's first name and last name, and we're going to call it right here. Aaron, it's looking good for you. Aaron. Let's see. Aaron K.
Hey,
Congratulations. All right. Very good. All right.
Aaron, I'll throw out there. I've got 2 baseball playing boys, and my son's bat broke this week. So if you want to donate that $100 to the Derek Runyon Bat Fund because we did such a great job today, I'll shoot you my email afterwards.
Very good. All right. So it's an option for you, Aaron. Otherwise, we'll circle back with you. If you don't hear from us inside of 24 hours, that just means we can't find your email address or something. So call us back. You can email us at ask@tcast.la. And what to do next as we wrap up is, look, this is really simple. Ask for that audit. Get your questions answered. Call me. If I can't answer the question well, then I will get it over to Andy and we'll put you in touch with him. And don't miss our next set of webinars. We've got sessions coming up on with experts in their industries on hyperconverged servers and telephony, a ton of different cybersecurity conversations, and a few other things mixed in that aren't necessarily cybersecurity related, but they're IT good, just kind of common questions we get. So check us out at www.tcast.la or turnkeysaw.com, whichever you feel like typing out /resources. And we just absolutely cannot wait to work with you and get those questions answered and help you out in any way, shape, or form. Andy, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you. I really appreciate you sharing this with my audience and my team here. We are so glad to have a resource like you finally out there. Is there anything that you'd like to share kind of last with the audience before we get out of here?
Yeah. And I mean, guys, anything that I said today, please don't take this as me dismissing local agents. There are good local agents out there that know cyber insurance, right? So if you've got a good local agent that knows cyber and can speak cyber and they're already dealing with Henry, you're probably in good hands. My encouragement as a guy that has traveled the state of Louisiana for baseball over the years, don't let good boudin and crawfish be the determining factor on who you write cyber insurance with, right? Like, make sure that they know what is going on. And if you have somebody that's a generalist, that's a buddy, you understand that consulting with us, moving that cyber policy over to us, we don't write any other types of insurance. We'll happily do the cyber and leave the rest to them.
Yeah. Or can they go through the audit and not buy a policy from you?
100%. Absolutely. We for sure. Right. What happens more often than not, things flesh out and questions flesh out. I mean, we'll have people that'll go through it and say, you know what, we have the policy that we need, but we really like the consultation that we got with Fifth Wall. Can we just move this over to you guys and get that same consultation and education? That happens pretty regularly, but does it have to happen? No, not at all. You can keep your agent, right? You can stay with those guys. We'll be happy. We are, through our relationship with Turnkey, we are a third party that just comes in, puts an eye on it, and we'll give you straight facts about where you sit.
Yep. And to extend that clarification, our relationship with Fifth Wall is advisory only. We bring them to the because they're great resources. I don't make a penny what y'all do. It's just a stressful situation when I, as your IT company, ask you, okay, let's call your insurance company, and you say, what? It's very painful.
Listen, insurance law in the United States has done a really good job to make sure that we don't share any premium bound with you guys, right? So for everybody that's on the call, understand that we are a consultative third party. There is no money back and forth here at all because it's illegal. So essentially all we do is just help on an issue that has become increasingly more painstaking for MSPs nationwide.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Andy, on that point, let's try to make some of this pain go away. We sincerely appreciate your time. If y'all have a question and you didn't get it answered in the chat, please bring it up to us. Email us at ask@tcas.la or call us at 225-751-4444 or find us up on the web, www.tcas.la. And from the whole team here at Turnkey Solutions, we say thank you very much for y'all coming out. And thank you, Andy, and all of Fifth Wall for providing such phenomenal resources to us today.
For sure. Everybody have a great day.
Y'all have a great day and great weekend, and we'll talk with you soon.